Yamunatiravanachariyam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunda Bihari Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayet. Hare Krishna. So, Deutsch oder English? English. Okay, I will speak in English. Everybody speaks English, no? So we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 11, Text 19. Ja, ist 19 dran? 18 is here. Okay. Please repeat. So, Kalo Idang Bhagavan Kala Shaktya Guna Pravahena Vibhakta Viryaha Karoti Akartaiva Nihanti Ahanta Cheshta Vibhumnaha Kalu Durvibhavya. Ich kann noch 2 trinken. So now line by line. Saukalidam Bhagavan Kalashaktya Guna Pravahena Vibhakta Viryaha Karotya Kartaiva Nihantya Hanta Cheshta Vibhumna Kalodur Vibhavya Sakalidam Bhagavan Kalashaktya Guna Pravahena Vibhakta Viryaha Karotya kartaiva nihantya hantam. Chishta vibhumna kalu durvibhavyam. Saukalidam bhagavan kala shaktyam. Guna pravahena vibhakta viryaham. Karotya kartaiva nihantya hantam. Chishta vibhumna kalu durvibhavyam. Saukalidam bhagavan kala shaktyam. Guna pravahena vibhakta viryaham. Karotya kartaiva nihantya hantam. Chishta vibhumna kalu durvibhavyam. Ladies? Anybody else? Okay, please repeat word by word. Saham. D. Kalu. However. Idam. This universe. Bhagavan. The personality of Godhead. Kala. Of time. Shaktya. By the force. Guna pravahena. By the interaction of the modes of nature. Vibhakta. Divided. Viryaha. Whose potencies. Karoti. Acts upon. Akarta. The non-doer. Eva. Although. Nihanti. Kills. Ahanta. Non-killer. Chesta. The energy. Vibhumnaha, of the Lord. Kalu, certainly. Durvibhavya, inconceivable. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, by His inconceivable supreme energy, time causes the interaction of the three modes of material nature, and thus varieties of energy become manifest. It appears that He is acting, but He is not the actor. He is killing, but He is not the killer. Thus, it is understood that only by His inconceivable power, everything is happening. So once again, the translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, by His inconceivable supreme energy, time, causes the interaction of the three modes of material nature, and thus varieties of energy become manifest. It appears that He is acting, but He is not the actor. He is killing, but He is not the killer. Thus, it is understood that only by His inconceivable power, everything is happening. Purport. The word Dhurvibhavya means inconceivable by our tiny brain. And Vibhakta Viryaha means divided in varieties of potencies. This is the right explanation of the display of creative energies in the material world. We can better understand the mercy of God by an example. A government state is always supposed to be merciful, but sometimes, in order to keep law and order, the government employs its police force, and thus punishment is meted out to the rebellious citizens. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always merciful and full of transcendental qualities, but certain individual souls have forgotten their relationship with Krishna and have endeavored to lord it over material nature. As a result of their endeavor, they are involved in varieties of material interactions. It is correct to argue, however, that because energy issues from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, He is the actor. In the previous verse, the word nimitta matram indicates that the Supreme Lord is completely aloof from the actions and reactions of this material world. How is everything being done? The word inconceivable has been used. It is not within the power of one small brain to comprehend. Unless one accepts the inconceivable power and energy of the Lord, one cannot make any progress. The forces which act are certainly set up by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but He is always aloof from their action and reaction. The varieties of energies produced by the interaction of material nature produce the varieties of species of life and their resultant happiness and unhappiness. How the Lord acts is nicely explained in the Vishnu Purana. Fire is situated in one place, while the heat and light produced by the fire act in many different ways. Another example given is that the electric powerhouse is situated in one place, but by its energies, many different types of machinery move. The production is never identical with the original source of energy, but the original source of energy, being the prime factor, is simultaneously one with and different from the product. One with and different from the product. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya's philosophy, Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva, is the perfect way of understanding. In this material world, the Lord incarnates in three forms, as Brahma, as Vishnu, and Shiva, by which He takes charge of the three modes of material nature. By His incarnation of Brahma, He creates, as the incarnation of Vishnu He maintains, and by His incarnation of Shiva, He annihilates. But the original source of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, is always apart from these actions and reactions of material nature. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyanangyana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So once again the verse. Saukal vidam bhagavan kala shaktya guna pravahena vibhakta viryaha karotya kartaiva nihantya hanta cheshta bhumna kaludhur vibhavya. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, by His inconceivable supreme energy, time, causes the interaction of the three modes of material nature, and thus varieties of energy become manifest. It appears that He is acting, but He is not the actor. He is killing, but He is not the killer. Thus it is understood that only by His inconceivable power is everything happening. Hare Krishna, good morning. So, this is still Manu talking to Dhruva Maharaj, advising him, giving him good counseling. And in the previous verses also, the topic is the nature of the Lord in relationship to material reality. So we are currently trapped, or we find ourselves within the material reality, which surrounds us, on all sides, and seems the absolute reality because we know nothing else. So as long as we don't have a realization of true spirit, this is reality for us, and it's absolute because we know nothing else. But the more we experience spiritual realization, first we might have a theoretical understanding, and then ideally also we have a practical experience that this material reality is not everything that is. There is more to existence. And usually we can comprehend that already by looking inwards. Generally speaking, we have the tendency to say, whatever I can see, I believe. Many people say that. Only what is seen is believed. Everything that is not seen, I don't believe. But actually, if we realize a little bit the subtle reality of our existence, most of the things that are relevant for us are not seen. So all our emotions, all our fears, ambitions, visions, expectations, it's all not seen, but it's very important. And in many relationships, that also can be very problematic. When you expect the other person to see what is unseen and unspoken, but it's within you. You are expecting something. And you expect the other person to somehow read you and realize what you actually want. And of course, the longer you know somebody, you might be able to see that, but it's not directly perceivable. It's also very often not even talked about, but it's felt. So this is called the mind. So the mind is actually the most important part of our material existence, and it's subtle. It's emotions, it's thoughts, it's desires. And this mind is actually the binding element between our external reality, which is just very gross and sensory, and the internal reality. So that's the connection between the external world we are very much involved in, and think or perceive as absolute reality, and the actual, you could say, subtle transcendent origin of this external manifestation that we find. Of course, beyond this mind, there is also the buddhi, intelligence, and beyond buddhi is ahankara, and only beyond the ahankara is the true self, the atma. So the more we have a perception and realization of the atma, we actually understand that reality is greater and bigger. But the reason why it is so difficult for us to transcend this material reality is also mentioned here. It's the interaction of the three modes of material nature. So there are three gunas, tamaguna, rajaguna, and sattvaguna. And these three modes of nature are the ingredient of all that exists. All that we perceive, at least, surrounding us. All of material existence is a combination of these three modes, or three energies, you could also say. And like it is said here, this supreme energy is time. Within matter, the supreme energy of the Lord is time. And in the Bhagavad Gita, there is a very spectacular situation where this becomes revealed. So Arjuna has heard from Krishna about all his potencies, how Krishna is nature, different animals, different aspects of great things and wonderful things about nature. All are considered, or Krishna is saying, they represent me. Like he's saying, I am the power in the healing herbs among the creatures of the ocean. I am the shark, and so on. So he's telling how we can perceive him in all manifestation. And so then Arjuna says, I would like to see this. I would like to see this Vishvarupa, this universal energy, universal manifestation. Please show it to me. And then Krishna gives Arjuna the eyes, to perceive this Vishvarupa. And it is said this Vishvarupa, as Arjuna perceived it, was greater and more wonderful than anything that had been seen before. So one of the things that Arjuna could see is that Krishna, in the body of Krishna, he could see the past, he could see himself on the battlefield, perceiving that same universal form. Nisingari Bhagavan Ki Jai. And he could also see the future. He could see how everything would be destroyed. And this destruction, was overwhelming, because he could see how all the people who were assembled were actually dying, one after the other, being devoured by this powerful universal form. And not only all the assembled warriors, but ultimately everything, all the living entities, all the worlds, everything. He could see the destruction of everything. So he became completely shocked and overwhelmed by this vision. And ultimately, Arjuna asked Krishna, who are you? I thought we were friends, because Arjuna and Krishna are very good friends, and they sleep in the same bed, and they have many adventures together. And there's one very famous story of Narada Muni visiting, I think it was Dwarka, or maybe somewhere else, maybe Hastinapur. But Krishna and Arjuna were resting together, and he could see how each cell of Krishna's body was chanting Arjuna's name, and each cell of Arjuna's name was chanting Krishna's name. So they're very good friends, very intimate friends. But at this point, Arjuna was confused. He said, I thought you were my best friend, but now I'm not sure who you are. Who are you? Who are you? And then the answer Krishna gave is Kalosmi. I am time. I am time. So time is considered to be the most evident manifestation of the absolute power of God within material reality. We cannot avoid it. We are completely, dependent on it, and it's insurmountable. Even there are speculations about time travel. Technically speaking, that would mean you would be controlling God. What is described in the Vedas is trikalagya. If you have a connection with the Akash-chitta, with the Supreme Consciousness, you can perceive past, present, and future. That is described, that many yogis or great personalities, rishis, they might have this ability. The Lord is Trikalagya, so you can also have this ability. But to overcome time is not possible. Time is all-powerful. So time is the factor that causes the movement in matter. So that's the description. It's a short description here. In many parts of the Bhagavatam, we have a description of how the time factor sets everything in motion in combination with the three modes of nature. So when the time factor acts, then of course all the interactions and combinations of the modes of nature appear. And like it said here, all the varieties of energy become manifests. So all the different energies, everything is happening. And the main point that Srila Prabhupada is trying to make in the purport is that all of this is it's very difficult to understand how God is doing that. Because the last part of this verse is talking about how he is not the doer, while ultimately nothing is done without his sanction, or without his uninvolvement, you could say. Basically, he's involved in everything. Not a blade of grass moves without his sanction, without his knowing. So then how is it that he is the doer, but he's not responsible? That's a very big query that many people have, like thinkers, atheists, philosophers, They think, how is it, that God, is doing everything? So that means he must be a very bad God. Look all the bad things he's doing. All these horrible things that he's doing. So that's the mystery. How is it that he's doing, but at the same time he's not the doer? And Srila Prabhupada gives a few examples here. And one is that of the government. So there is this video game, I think it's called SimCity. Maybe somebody played this game. SimCity, so you build your city, SimCity, and you have to, build all kinds of things, to make the city work, And then the population is increasing. And one of the things that you should, build quite soon is, what is it? A prison. When you build a city, you have to build a prison. Otherwise, there will be an alarm coming on the sidebar of the video game. Too many criminals are disturbing the people, and there's nowhere to put them. So that's the reality, that you can count that a certain percentage, different countries, different percentage, but in average, more or less, it's said around 3%, are actually criminal. Tend to be criminal, tend to be caught, tend to be sentenced. And of course, some communities might have a higher percentage. I was just hearing a survey in England. That's like the average is 3%, but some groups, have 17%. Some have below 3%. So, but that you can estimate. What their nature is, what their qualities are. But the average in England is 3%. I don't know what's in Germany. The incarceration rate. So out of 100 people, 3 will go to jail. So, like that. So, does it mean that the government is bad? No. The government is far-sighted, So it's far-sightedness. It means that you can count on some people going rogue, rebellious, violent, selfish, destructive. So you have to, educate them. Of course, there are different types of, incarceration systems, and the Scandinavian system is considered to be one of the most benevolent. So the idea of the Scandinavian system is that while they are in prison, they should become good citizens, Not the way around, While they're in prison, they become the worst humans ever, Even worse than before, Because that also happens very often, That many people go to prison, and then in prison they actually are confronted, with all these criminals, and then it becomes really, really bad, So they come out, and they don't learn anything. So this is also a statistic I read about America, for example. I forgot the exact number, but a shocking number of people, spend less than 24 hours out of prison once they get out. So they get out of prison, and they have nothing, they don't know what to do, and again, they immediately, within 24 hours, they get in trouble, and they're back inside, Like 7 years in prison, then 18 hours outside, and then again back, So, like that, So very common that people don't learn, actually. They didn't, the method did not work. They did not learn, actually. They actually commit the same mistakes, or are worse even, and then it becomes a perpetual mode that they actually spend most of their life at the end in prison. So the idea in Scandinavia is that people should be reformed, and that's certainly also the idea why there is, spirituality, why there is spirituality is the wrong word. Why there is, what spiritual teachings, why there are scriptures, why there are gurus, teachers, temples, Because the idea is that even we are within the material reality, we can be reformed. So the material world is the prison house. And in Sanskrit it's called Durga. So Durga Devi, she is the, what do you call it? I don't know, prison director, Durga Devi is the prison director. She's very powerful. She has 10 arms, and a trident, So the 10 arms, with the 10 arms, she's guarding the 10 directions with different weapons. But especially the trident is very prominent, So the trident can represent the 3 modes of material nature, but also the 3 forms of suffering. Adhyatmika kleshas, adibhautika kleshas, and adidhaivika kleshas. Sufferings that come from our own body and mind, sufferings that come from conflict between different living entities, and the sufferings we experience from nature. So this is the material situation. We are in a Durga. So Durga can also mean a fort, but depending on which side the lock is, it can also be a prison. So Durga is the fortress, the prison of material existence. And of course, this prison is represented by the deity of Durga Devi or Maya Devi. But it's ultimately an elemental prison. So we have all these elements, covering our pure consciousness, beginning with the Ahankara, Buddhi, with the false ego, intelligence, mana, the mind, and then the 5 gross elements. This is a formidable prison. And this elemental prison is covering the entire universe and also each individual. So we have our individual prison bodies, you could say, and we're looking out of the eyes, These are the bars, So through the eyes we can look out, and it's described that the eyes, especially the eyes, the face, but especially the eyes among the face, are the index of the mind, So through the eyes you can look into somebody's, emotions, consciousness, And so we are trapped in this material reality, and of course we are doing all kinds of things, which might be good or not so good, or middle, mixed. But it doesn't mean that because we are doing it, God is responsible. He's just providing the energy. So this is the second example Srila Prabhupada is giving about the energy, the power plant. So there's a power plant, and with the power plant, provides energy for everybody. We have electricity bill. We have to pay for it. So the question is, what do you do with this electricity? We can light up the altar and the temple. Very good use of electricity. Because traditional temples in India are very dark. Actually, there's basically no windows. There are only ghee lamps traditionally. The Garbhagriha always usually is without windows. But still, Srila Prabhupada used to say that the temple should glow like Vaikuntha. Akila always reminds us. So it should not be too dark. We should use some lamps for sure, or electricity. But you can also use this electricity to grow hemp, to grow ganja. I had some friends. We visited them. We made a program with them at their place. We did some kirtan. And they said, "Oh, you want to see our plants?" And then they, in their living room, they had this big box, and they, big box, and they were growing some ganja, in the living room in Rostock, in an apartment house. So, if the electricity bill is too high, for such a small apartment, very small apartment they had, maybe 30 square meters, very small apartment, 2 boys. And they had very high electricity bill, So at one point, if the authorities are smart, they will realize something is wrong, Small apartment, 2 young boys. Why do they need so much electricity, What are they doing with all this electricity, And then they're in trouble, Now not anymore. Now it's legal, I heard, In Germany at least. But the point is that at that time they were very afraid. Actually, they always, whenever they opened the box, they would close all the curtains, close all the windows so nobody would smell. So they were a little bit panicking sometimes, but still they will do it. So like that. So it's not the fault of the. You cannot blame Eon. Why did you give electricity to these boys? It's not the fault of the energy provider. It's their individual choices, So in the same way, God is providing everything that we have, but it's not His fault that we sometimes go rogue or do something the wrong way. But like I mentioned before, still the idea is that we should become reformed. We should become redempted. There is redemption for everybody. There is no eternal damnation. In our understanding, the Jiva Atma, the soul, is Jiveda Swarupahaya Krishnera Nityadhas. Tatashta Shakti Bheda Bheda Prakash. So we are a manifestation that is between matter and spirit. We are very small, tiny Jiva Atmas, and we are Bheda Bheda. We are same as the Lord in quality, but in quantity we are very small. So we are, from our nature, we belong to the spiritual reality, but by our current condition, we are materially inclined and materially contaminated. So, but our ultimate nature is Jiveda Swarupahaya Krishnera Nityadas. Our eternal Swarupa, actual innermost real form is Krishnera Nityadhas, to be servants of God, servants of Krishna. That's our nature of each and every living entity. So this dormant qualification is there in every living entity. And by the right circumstances and right association, right endeavors as well, and also by taking shelter, sharanagati, we can reawaken fully this quality which is dormant within. So we should be reformed. So our idea is more like the idea of the Scandinavian prisons. So we come to this world to learn something. This is very often in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Yoga Sutras. This world has a purpose. It's not purposeless. Like sometimes materialistic people think there's no meaning. It just happened, there happened to be humans now for some time, after the dinosaurs, now the humans are here ruling the world. and then we will pollute everything, we'll destroy everything, humankind will be annihilated, and then the planet will just float around the world with just plants on it, and animals maybe, and humans are gone. Or maybe it will just be completely distracted, and there'll never be again humans again. Something like that, a very dystopic idea that is just a whim of, it's like a whim. For some reason, somehow, there's humans on this planet, but it's just by chance, And it's also only on this planet, Nowhere else, there's life, It's the only place there's life. There's like, the universe is so gigantic, even by modern comprehension, and even more so by the Vedic comprehension, because there's not one universe, there's many universes. And only in this tiny, small speck, called, Bhuloka, Earth, only here there's life. Because there's the right temperature and the right humidity. That's why life was possible on Earth. But according to the Upanishads, of course, we understand that life is possible everywhere. Sarvagata is the word. The Jiva Atma can exist under all circumstances. And more it dawned to people, modern science as well, that life is possible everywhere. And I always give the same examples, but they're striking to understand. And that's the example of the fire volcano beetle from Iceland. So in Iceland, there's many volcanoes and geysers, and they have so much heat that in Reykjavik, which is the capital of Iceland, they have floor heating in all the streets. In the winter when it snows, everything is always clean because all the city streets and walkways are floor heated, endless energy. So many volcanoes, a lot of hot water there. And there's some beetles, small insects, and they live in lava, So usually you would think, living entity cannot survive, in too much heat. But there are living entities that survive in lava, no problem. And there are also living entities that survive in the deep sea, for example. So there are trenches in the world that are 10,000, 11,000 meters deep, and the scientists were anonymously convinced there's no life possible in the deep seas. It's too dark. There's too much pressure. But when they finally went into these deep trenches with some very powerful submarines that were almost cracking, for all the pressure, there were fish there, very funny fish, translucent fish with light bulbs on their heads, you might have seen funny skeletons and big teeth, and so if we would be transported to the deep sea, we would immediately be squashed and become pulverized. It would be just like a speck of blood, and all our organs would disintegrate immediately. So much pressure. So we think life is not possible there for us, but for the deep sea fish, they're having a good time. No problem. So life is possible everywhere. That's what we hear. And depending on the environment that surrounds us, we receive a fitting body. The soul is eternal, cannot be killed, cannot be drowned, cannot be burned, cannot be anything. Nothing can cut it, destroy it. The soul is eternal. That's one of the main topics Krishna explains in the very beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. Nahanyate nahanyamane sharire. When the body is slain, the Atma, the self, is not slain. It will survive, any circumstances. So depending on what environment surrounds us, we receive a body, a Durga, elemental prison that keeps us in that area. So if you live in the deep sea waters, this deep sea fish, they are translucent, They have basically no muscle fiber, kind of. They're just, I don't know exactly what they are, but mainly water, Some other elements are also there because they have some lights, It's very dark down there, so they have some light bulbs actually, and they're like flashing, So some fire element is also there, but proportionally they're mainly water. And we humans who live on the surface, similar to our surroundings, we are also, proportionally made of, some earth, some water, mainly water, And of course, if you are a fire beetle, the fire element should be more prominent, so you can survive in fire. And like that, life is possible in all planets, in all places, in all environments. There are fitting bodies. So we hear, for example, that in Satyaloka, the highest planet, the highest dimension within this planet, the residents have bodies that are predominantly made out of intelligence. So that's a good body to have, They don't have gross bodies like we have. They have subtle bodies, and their body is not predominantly water, which, like our bodies, if we don't drink, we dehydrate. Their bodies are not dependent, like that. Predominantly intelligent. So that we can only imagine, try to imagine how much capacity of understanding and overseeing and remembering, they might have. Like Lord Brahma himself, he is able to, manage the entire universe, So sometimes we are struggling to manage in our own lives, always to some extent, Then we have to manage maybe a family, then manage, maybe a community, maybe managing a country, What to speak of managing the universe, So if you need to manage the universe, you need a body that is capable, to do that. The last topic that Srila Prabhupada is talking about here is where was it? The second part of the yes. So Srila Prabhupada is ending this purport by talking about the guna avatars that control the three modes of material nature. So Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu. Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu, all three of them, they are responsible for managing one of those three material modes. And they, even they're directly managing these modes of nature, they're not under the influence necessarily of those modes of nature. And the point Srila Prabhupada is making is that Garbhodakashaya Vishnu is the origin of all incarnations within material energy. So Garbhodakashaya Vishnu is Vishnu lying in the Garbhodaka ocean. It's like you could say the super soul of each universe. And from him, all these different incarnations are emanating. So even the agents, that come in the name of God, they are also not directly responsible because they are an agent. And you could say the further away you are from that original agency, or the more you are not in line with this original agency, we are in trouble. And that's of course the whole idea of yoga, that we reconnect ourselves, and we have agency. So agency means, I know you understand the word agency. It means you are empowered. So sometimes we think, oh, I'm born in a very bad situation, I have no money, but you always have agency, because we are jiva tattvas, we are eternal spiritual souls. So we have agency, we're never lost. And of course, sometimes people consider their agency to be just, their willpower. When people talk about inequality, they say, you can still do it. You can still become rich if you endeavor enough. But we might not have always that kind of agency. That's a little bit of an illusion. Within matter, there is no real equality. And some people will have more agency than others. Some people will be born rich, and will be intelligent, and will be successful, and will be disciplined, And other people will be born poor, but they are intelligent and disciplined, so they can get out of it, And some people might be not intelligent and poor and bad association and bad habits, so like that. So the agency within matter is not always equal, It might be, depending on your karmas, we have a different material agency, but our spiritual agency is always there. We always have our connection to God. And that's eternal, and it's not dependent on bhakti, or devotion is not dependent on material qualifications. That's been shown again and again. Very simple people and very philosophically elevated people very often, strive for the same. And very often, very qualified, sophisticated philosophers marvel at the simplicity of devotion of some very simple person. Because ultimately, it's very natural. Bhakti or devotion to God is our nature, and it's nothing complicated. It's something very intrinsic that's within us. And that would be, according to the spiritual definition, true intelligence. You should know how to be happy. Some people with very complex, lives, but are not happy. Very sophisticated, very wealthy, but not happy. So we are intelligent if we manage to be happy. That's considered to be the ultimate proof. Also in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, it says, this process is, shown to be, perfect or ideal because it makes the self happy. Like that. Okay, I'll stop here. Maybe there are some comments, questions, additions. Yes.
Can you tell some story of a simple saint?
There's, of course, a very famous story of this Brahmana in South India. I think Kurmakshetra, but I'm not sure. But I think Kurmakshetra. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw him crying. And many people, and some of the Brahmanas of the community were making fun of him, because he could not read, But still he was studying Bhagavad Gita, And he was crying, but not out of desperation. He was crying in a very jubilant way, like out of pure emotion. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked him, you're basically holding the Bhagavad Gita upside down, and you're studying the Bhagavad Gita. So if you're not reading it, you're not understanding it, then how come you're experiencing, something so deep? And then the Brahmana answered that he received the instruction from his guru to read Bhagavad Gita, so he tried, but if you're not understanding anything, then how come you? So the blessing of the guru, of course, very important. So he just executed his duty anyways, And then he started, studying Bhagavad Gita, but he knew, that the topic of the Gita he had heard, and he knew that Krishna was ready to become the charioteer of his best friend Arjuna. And the charioteer means you're in a very low position and you're kicked, left and right to be guided. So he said, just thinking of this picture, basically the cover of Bhagavad Gita that we have, I'm so happy, that Krishna is willing to become the guider, the protector. Even if he's in a lower position, Krishna doesn't mind, So that was his deep realization of Bhagavad Gita, that Krishna is willing to become the charioteer of his best friend Arjuna. So, and he had very deep realization and appreciation for Krishna. Even he could not really read Bhagavad Gita, but he understood the essence of Bhagavad Gita. Like that. Okay. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.